Mountain Time, January 3rd, 2024. Happy birthday, Greta Thunberg and Kyle Rittenhouse. They were both extracted from the same vat on this day, 22 years ago. Maybe, yeah, that's about right. I think they're old enough to drink, actually. Let me double check that. Kyle Rittenhouse actually just put out a book, and I've been trying to get a copy of it without having to pay him. I'm hoping I can get it from the library. Okay, yeah, he's actually 21, so he and Greta are now of legal drinking age. Oh man, so many not nice things I'm actually repressing on this. I'm not going to get triggered by any of these media personalities anymore because we know what they are. But it is notable that, of course, Rittenhouse and Thunberg represent the extremes of each side, embodied in like these youthful, idealistic characters who are just diametrically opposed to one another. And they're, I think, engineered to inflame the opposite side. So, Greta and Kyle, both of them, again, happy birthday. Let's see what we have going on today. Today's the 3rd. We've had a few different seeming events that got the QAnons kind of hyped up that the end was finally here because that's what they want. They want it all to end. And we're waiting right now on any news from the Epstein files that have been released. And we heard that Clinton likes young girls. Like, tell us something we don't know. It just feels like another nothing burger. And amazingly, the QAnoners have survived, subsisting off of a diet of pretty much hopium, red pills laced with menthol, and nothing burgers. But I think this is another one until I see pictures. The title of tonight's live stream, though, is this. The Autohoaxers have often been accused of being planted here to discredit truthers. And I used to say, no, of course not. We're not discredited. Now I'm thinking about it, and it's like, yeah, actually, you need to be discredited. You're operating as a faction of the propaganda matrix. Forget mainstream alternative. It's all part of the same operation. And I've been getting deeper into nuanced debates with 9/11 truthers on purpose in order to fine-tune argumentation to use in an upcoming debate we're going to have. So first ISS, next we'll revisit 9/11 and some other things, but 9/11 truthers are a very special bunch that need to be, I think, directly targeted with this message because they're the ones who are reachable. But the auto-hoaxers are here to 9/11, the MSM, and trutherism. Contrived everything it is. And if you're still getting triggered by Thunberg because you're on the right or Kyle because you're on the left, they got you. But the people on the left are doomed, in my opinion. If they wake up at all, if you're leftist and you're a blue pillar and you have any kind of a conscience, you're going to go woke, which marries you to big government, which makes you the enemy of freedom. Whereas if you're on the right and you wake up, you get red pills, you probably get steered down some pretty dark trails, wrong turns, running laps around trees, missing the forest, but there's still hope because at least you're trying. So, for example, and this has been for more than 24 hours straight, been having this conversation, incited by my Mickey Mouse meme about how 9/11 was a simulated terror attack and nobody died. So the common ground, the hill that the 9/11 truthers are going to die on, is the pile of dead bodies. You know how the left always loves to grandstand on top of the piles of dead kids in order to advance their gun control agenda? Well, the 9/11 truthers really love to stand atop the pile of 3,000 bodies, although some agree that it's less than 3. Some say it's a couple thousand because of the planes, but regardless, they're slathered in theatrical blood. In fact, lately, I've been calling a lot of the people in the truther community who are still promulgating the belief that people are dying in these mass casualty simulation events, I'm calling them propaganda mules. And why? If you're not getting paid, they have maybe a stick and a carrot, or a stick on and what is the carrot? Nasara, Jasara, QAnon, the Great Awakening. But you're a propaganda mule. You're carrying water for the other side, and it really does need to stop. So here's what Venom has said to me, though. He said, "I am a skeptic, but I don't look at it in black and white, auto-hoaxing everything." That was a movement brought in to break up the community of real media skeptics in 2014. So he's one layer back. He's on the other side of the screen. He thinks he's a skeptic. And here's my response here. Autohoaxers are the only skeptics criticizing media. Truthers can only manage to be selectively skeptic because they accept the implicit argument from authority that MSM presents. So let me give you an example. If you accept the authority of the screen, then and you're a truther, maybe you don't agree on how the towers fell. Oh, they fell too fast. So it might be something else. Or somebody else did it. Direct energy weapons, or it wasn't really terrorists. But you still accept the basic premise that people died and the thing collapsed and it was unexpected. You don't include in the frame of reference that what they showed you on TV might have been a movie superimposed over a regular demonstration surrounded by dozens of government agencies conducting simulation drills on that day. Like, they don't include movie magic in their assessment. This is the same reason why you can't have an honest intellectual debate with somebody who believes in NASA's movies as scientific evidence. If you're going to point to some video of these buffoons pretending to levitate with hairspray on and harnesses behind them, like basically doing a puppet show, but they're pretending to be in space. But if you're going to say that's scientific evidence, I'm going to say, no, you've accepted the screen as an authority, that whatever is coming through it is just objective, and that's just provably not so. And it's a real dumb proposition. It really is, in the sense that you're saying that no matter what I see, I'm going to augment it with stuff that I haven't seen just because it's been presented from this source. It's not quite objective. And again, if they set the stage and you add on to that story, you're not technically a skeptic. If you're arguing over body count or whether it was caused by gun culture or SSRIs, you're already in the weeds with them. I heard this conversation the other day, and someone mentioned how if you're a car salesman, if you can get them deciding what color paint, then you've already made the sale. And the red pill truthers have already been sold on the lie. They just argue over the details. That's not skeptical, again. And we'll be fine-tuning these arguments, but as you'll see from these conversations, I'm getting a lot of pushback, which is a good thing because it's educational. So for example, and here's another exchange with the same person, the same media infrastructure that faked 9/11 faked the moon landings, faked January 6th. And if you don't see these things integrated together, then you don't understand how media works or how monolithic it is, and you're mind controlled. And what he said was, what about COVID? What about the vaxes? Has that been faked as well? And I said, and a lot of people hate me for this, pro and anti-vax are controlled positions. Sorry to break the good news to you, but it was a psychological operation and you might have been duped. So, some people have a hard time letting go or realizing they could have been lied to. And Synchromorpheus chimed in here. Same person, Venomous said, typical attempt to redirect the conversation. One topic, 0 deaths on 9/11, proof. You have all the time you need. Now, I'm not changing the subject by bringing up January 6th. I'm explaining that it's the same media infrastructure that does the fakery. That's what I'm trying to explain, that he's not thinking big enough. This is a paradigm shock, especially for 9/11 truthers, covered in fake blood. So CJ said, you can't prove a negative, you must prove a positive. What is your proof of any deaths other than something you were told by a source that is not trustworthy or reliable? Now, again, one more point here. And again, he's saying that he is a skeptic. You mistakenly assume mainstream media is providing objective views of the world, which the viewers debate over. You don't seem to understand that their essential framing excludes and conceals more than it reveals. And that's one of the main points here. It's like, I liken it to a magic show. You will be tricked as long as you're in the seat. It's designed so you can't really see outside and take more information in that brings any doubt. It's an illusion, and people take it literally. If when it's on the TV screen, they don't recognize the capacity for fakeability, and that's what we're bringing into the conversations here. that the screen is not a window to the world, but it's rather a filter. And lately I've been calling it a digital hoodwink. So again, I'm not distracting. In fact, from now on, I'm going to consciously include January 6th debunking with 9/11 debunking whenever we get into these conversations. There's more with him, but one other thing. There's a very good video. Woo's News was interviewed by the Alpha Warrior on Rumble. And I'll put a link below because this is worth listening to every minute. There's quite a lot in here, and it all makes perfect sense. Again, if those of you are, if you know anyone who still believes the official story of January 6th or some variant of it, like the Tucker Carlson version. The Tucker Carlson version was a bunch of peaceful protesters got there, and then Ray Epps said, run in the Capitol, and they all did. Because they're all MAGA NPCs, right? He hacked their minds and caused them to run. No, what we know to be true is something that Tucker Carlson will never talk about. Like he won't talk about the dark aliens that are really scary. He won't tell his wife. Or us. We're in the same category as Tucker's wife. He's protecting her from the dark truth about the dark aliens. I mean, this is xenophobia to the next level. And he's like, I can't talk about it. I can't tell my wife. But tell us, we're your viewers. I thought you were a populist. All right, we're going to go right into this. I'm not going to play any clips from it actually, but I have a number of quotes from it. I wanted to go over it. I'll play a few seconds just so you can know who we're referencing. So, Woo's News and I have spoken, and I want to reach out to him again very soon. He's working on his magnum opus, the part 3, that's going to tie it all together. But the Alpha Warrior show had a conversation with him, and I think he said he's a former cop, and he knows a lot about undercover cops. And there was a lot in this conversation that he brought out regarding January 6th not being a false flag, like Tucker would say, oh, there were some feds there. No, much bigger. It was much bigger. And I have some points that I highlighted, but let me play a few seconds here. And link is in the chat.
Send you a link. I think at some point I'll try to re-upload it to Rumble, but they keep taking it down. But it's on Odyssey, and it's definitely on BitChute. Everything wrong with the Capitol shooting in 21 minutes or less. And it's 21 minutes, where Act 2 is an hour and 18 minutes.
Well,
The director's cut of Act 2 is 2 hours. So right now, as I'm editing Act 3, I'm keeping all that information in mind as I proceed, you know.
Again, this is Woo's News, who came out with the everything wrong with the Capitol riots in 21 minutes. And it's a 21-minute video, and it's damning, and it's been banned on Rumble. The free speech absolutists on Rumble. And that's because truthers don't like the truth. They like their narrative, their counter-narrative. So a few points that were brought up. One, the basic story is Trump gives a speech, and then everyone runs up to the Capitol angry and mad, embittered, and they tear it down. The truth of it is, the show began at the Capitol while Trump was still speaking. And after his speech, even if they wanted to go, it was a 45-minute walk. So if you were just a normie, you weren't a Fed, an operative, you weren't part of the 1,000 plus member cast of this production, including all the police officers were actors as well. There were Feds, there were handlers. This is all provable. The police were all actors in this. This was theater, 100%. But the crowd of people who weren't wearing the orange marker stickers, who weren't identifiable as in on the gig, this theater, they were far away when it started. There's no way that normies got in there. And moreover, there were already media there at the site, ready to record the action, including a lot of influencers, live streamers, all of whom helped build the illusion. But the fact that you have like a big 1 hour gap is pretty telling here, plus the 45-minute walk, and he said 1,000 paid actors could easily be accounted for. And what's more, the Alpha Warrior host here mentions how part of the role, if you're an undercover cop, is to go to jail. Like, there's no reason to think that just because we have January 6 protesters in jail that they're POWs or they're oppressed or they're martyrs. No, they're cops. They're on a paid vacation. What's more, It was timed to the T. Everything was coordinated. This was a coordinated operation, but again, it is not what the public thinks. This was a simulated riot, nothing more. The news was in place, citizen journalists were in place, and I think the timing of it has all been um, detailed in his work, and he's able to expose this. And he's the one who really gave away that Ashley Babbitt was there with her poorly functioning squib. He commented maybe they got 2 tablespoons of blood out of it, but you have to watch everything wrong with the Capitol riots in 21 minutes. I'm not going to go over it now point for point, other than to say that it's 100% fakeable, that both sides were in on it, and he reiterates this, left and right. The people who were there, like Mike Pence and everybody pretending to work on certifying the election despite this big riot, yeah, they were in on it 100%. There's no question there. And they knew it was all theater. It was all just crisis acting. But this really throws a wrench in the whole MAGA movement itself. And what I mean is, if this is true, then Trump is either a complete fool in a Truman Show, surrounded by handlers, including his family, and he's basically in his own little world, or he's part of it. I mean, take your pick. And people who are married to the MAGA vision are not going to be able to let that go, and they don't like this truth. And this also goes along with 9/11. These are two things that are inconvenient truths, but it's actually good news, but it's kind of bad news. It depends on how you look at it. All right, we're joined by the HBIC, Cubstar, Clockwork 113, Zinvelis, Ears Up, Frank Murr, Bilkeys 14, Baja Pickleball says, was Epstein AI generated or just masky? You know, there were rumors that he was a mask, but there are pictures of him going back. You know, he worked with A.G. Barr's father, the guy who wrote those creepy gothic horrors about space islands populated by like these rich people who have islands full of teenage sex slaves. Basically, real life for Epstein later. But yeah, Epstein worked with A.G. Barr's father, Donald Barr, who wrote books. I think it was called Space Relations, an interplanetary gothic tale. Interestingly, there's an STD called the Epstein-Barr virus. And the symptoms of it include Alice in Wonderland syndrome, distortions of space relations, how big you are in relation to other things. Not to mention all the weird Alice in Wonderland mind control connotations there. Anyway, not to get into the weeds there, but we're waiting on some more Epstein stuff to show up. Pretty sure he's a real person. On some level, I mean, Ghislaine Maxwell did it with JFK Jr. That's a fact. Joined by Salty Siren, Grangerman, Into the Beyond, Ollie Goering, Skyfish. Tomanoid3 says false flag narrative is in the long kiss goodnight, a fake attack with 3,000 dead to get funding. Interesting. Joined by G33. Saw your comment there on, I think it was on Patreon. You said that you use Patreon because it's nice to get live stream notifications, and it's true. And I think you can sign up for as low as $2 a month, but if you join Patreon, you get not just live stream notifications, but I upload the MP3s and provide video links. So you won't miss anything if you're there. But it's no different than if you join us at ips.monster, the Substack. You get the same basic material. All right, let's see. Duas Impera says, I think people just feel bad about the general direction of things understandably, and truthorism red pilling is their medication. Auto-hoaxing equals red pill confiscation equals mad truthers. Yeah, it is true. And that's absolutely right. And I kind of understand it in a way. It's a trauma bond situation. And we're doing cult deprogramming en masse. And my objective here is to make them mad, because if in the course of the next 6 months we paradigm shock them on every front, on everything they cling to, we will enrage enough of them that, sure, many will push back against, like they did in 2014. They hated auto-hoaxers. That's why they created the term. They try to bury this. But this time around, I think enough of them will be pushed over the guardrails that it will exist as a parallel media, and it won't be beholden to this screen as authority. Then let's argue about what's on the screen. It's like, no, I'm actually socially distanced from that screen now. And many of us are. Like, this is not an anti-media. This is not an alt media. No, this is actually a parallel media network in a sense, but it's also more of a philosophical thing, and it does kind of delve into the what you would consider to be psychoepistemology of processing media in an age like this. Where we're hyper mediated, we live in the attention economy, and we're saturated with psychological operations. People are by design dumbed down visually, so they can't visually tell what's real or fake. We're being gaslit on a level that I think is kind of unmatched, although it's not necessarily new, because religions have done this forever. I mean, really, what we're living through is a new religious system and the new paradigm being installed, which is really just a bad operating system. So I'm certain that the powers that be do not like what we're doing here. They love Alex Jones because he reinforces their paradigm, has them fighting for their false worldview, and has them operating on their game table. And I often cite war games. Strange game, the only winning move is not to play. And that's a reference to mutually assured destruction of nuclear war. But for me, it's like strange game, the only winning move is not to play could easily be described as the world stage as game, especially when you get into politics or any extreme ideology. The only people who are in an enviable position, who have any peace of mind or any semblance of it, are the blue pilled. Although their peace of mind is a product of apathy. It's not the same as the peace of mind of those of us who know what's real and fake and aren't saddled with a bunch of what are essentially superstitions. And what I mean by apathy is this. On 10/8, and actually it's about 10/10 when they reported about the 40 decapitated babies. I was unperturbed by the news. I was amused by the fact that it was 33 years from the day of the incubator babies. And I'm just thinking, okay, fake dead kid industrial complex. These rubber dolls are being used to spread this atrocity propaganda. Very entertaining times. And I'm talking to a normie who says, "Did you hear about the dead babies?" And I was like, "Yeah, nice weather today, huh? Can't believe it's almost winter." And I changed the subject to the weather seamlessly, and they did not try to draw it back and say, "Hey, don't you care about the babies?" Not at all. They realized it was inconsequential, unnecessary to even worry about in a sense, but they still believed it was real. So to me, that's apathy. If I thought it was real, my response would be a little more than apathy. I would be like, "That's horrible for these reasons. Who do we blame?" Like, I would be triggered by it if I thought it was real. But the blue pillars aren't triggered. The ones who are the ones who get a little agitated and become a little more engaged, and they get steered into the political horseshoe. If they lean left, they go woke. They lean right, they go red pill. And red pill trutherism is a mirror of wokeism. It really is. And I've been comparing these things for some time. One of them is the comparison between the critical race theory critique of America and the critical, what I call critical Jew theory, which is on the right. Whether you blame whites for everything or Jews for everything, these are mirror scapegoat narratives that I think are, like, again, controlled oppositions. These are the sides of the political horseshoe, which I think is the wrong direction. But again, what happens is if you wake up from the dream world, they get you involved in their nightmare scenarios. And by involved, I mean fighting to wake up the blue pillars. So it's kind of interesting. It is like it's sort of like in the movie Leave the World Behind. They said that they were going to get the people to war amongst themselves to control them. And that's exactly what we're seeing, where the left and the right, when they wake up, are conditioned to try to wake up the blue pillars to deeper levels of mind control. It's like crabs pulling each other back into the bucket and nobody gets out. That's how this thing works too. A lot of it is just through fear of exile, peer pressure. Okay, let me continue through the comments. I want to see what's going on tonight. I put a link there for the Woo's News video. Thrustazar says auto believing is the blind spot. Yeah, exactly. And the term auto hoax means simply fake until proven real, calling it a hoax before believing it if there's no evidence to support it, which People will say, "Oh, you call everything fake. There's something wrong with that." And I'm like, no. Actually, if you look at the burden of proof and who owns it, automatically believing is a problem. And this is what I mean by the psychoepistemology of how we process media. If you automatically believe, you have a different mentality than somebody who questions. There's something that happens. There's a process there that has been inverted. And it may not always necessarily leave you in a bad place. It just kind of depends because they make conformity comfortable. But automatically believing requires, of course, I think, that you trust the right authorities, and they don't want to have any competition because we can steer auto believers, people who habitually just accept anything. Like some people are easy to steer, and that's where they want you. I don't think they want critical thinkers, but auto believers are the opposite of critical thinkers. But also, there's a faction within the red pill types, or I wouldn't even know what to call them. But there are many who just call everything fake, but indiscriminately. Like gorillas are fake, duck-billed platypuses are fake, koalas are fake, panda bears are fake. And the problem with that perspective, the auto disbeliever, is there's no nuance. They can't say why they know it's fake. And we're not shooting from the hip. This isn't intuition. This isn't just a nihilistic rejection. This is not reality denialism either. There's a huge difference. But to mischaracterize what we're doing as calling everything fake is missing the point. And people still try to do that. But this is the year, I think, that we clarify this and what it actually means. Salty Siren says there was a dress rehearsal on 12/12, the month before January 6th. There were some interesting meetings leading up to that event, and that event was certainly planned long in advance. Even the date, 1/6, 1/6 shows up within the fringe far right movement in all sorts of ways. I mean, from the very beginning, Waco. The ATF rated them over 1.6 million rounds. 1/6, January 6th, and I could find many, many examples going back. G33 says the thing in Iran today has me thinking because it's alleged that the responsible group isn't known and Iran says terrorism. Iran psyop to motivate its masses to be energetic toward Mid-East conflict. Yeah, I think so. And I think there might be something else as well pertaining to Trump and some kind of other possible motivation for the upcoming head wound psyop. What are we going to call that? Because it is a thing. They're going to do maybe we should call it. I was thinking about a name for it because it's his Biff Tannen phase when he exits the stage or fake dies. The Antichrist narrative unfolding, but it's coming. According to JL26, it will be on 8/4, which is kind of a ways from today. Not that I'm in a hurry. Like I'm not hoping for the end. I'm not waiting for a major plot twist. And many people kind of want that. They're waiting for the blackout, especially Qs. They're waiting for some kind of sign that it's all going to just start escalating, like dominoes to fall. And that's not going to happen. That's not how this thing works, in my opinion. It's a never-ending story. The end is a new beginning, but they keep you on the edge of your seat for purposes of, I think, diminishing the size of your world. You live in the now, the future's, it's going to end. You're in the end times. That's part of it. So they limit your sense of the world both geographically and in terms of the time itself, your frame of reference, how far ahead you think. Meanwhile, they're bending the news 5 years in advance. Like imagine people, part of the I Am Temple, the Church Universal Triumphant Cult, going into their doomsday bunker in like 1989 because they think that Russia's going to nuke us. Meanwhile, the people who fake the news at the highest level know, oh yeah, we're going to have Trump in office in 2016. Like they know that the sheeple are being terrified over things that are going to be phased out later. Like is anybody worried about the zombie deer virus right now? Nobody's talking about the zombie deer virus. Like that was the current thing. Or Chinese space lasers? Nope, that's not a thing. Trafficked children? Not a thing. The current thing right now is what? Who are the fake dead kids that truthers are supposed to give an F about this month? Or pretend to? Tomanoid 3 says, last year train crash, UFOs, Spielberg connection. Okay, now there's a few things about that now that you bring it up are very interesting. We're talking East Palestine, Ohio, a crash with a mushroom cloud that was foreshadowed in a movie called White Noise. And I think White Noise has a lot in common with Leave the World Behind. And of course, East Palestine may have been predictive programming for, I don't know, the Middle East right now, Palestine, Israel, perhaps there's a toxic airborne event on the way. But the Spielberg connection had to do with, was it a UFO thing? Some train that crashed with a UFO on board? There was something there as well. Tomanoid 3 goes on to say, this year, plane crash plus Masters of Air World War II series developed by Tom Hanks and Steven Spielberg airs on January 26th. Okay, now, January 26th, that's an interesting date for something having to do with the air and planes and crashing. If you look at the date of, I think it was Kobe Bryant, it was like a airborne immolation, and he died on January 26th. So that's the same date of Kobe Bryant's crash. And we were looking at that date because that was the same time, the same week of the Challenger explosion, and then Columbia. And we were looking at also, it's like 19 years to the day from the Apollo 1, and same anniversary as we're just going back looking at all these airborne immolations. And around this time, Elon Musk had said that they were going to, quote, sacrifice the Falcon to Dragon's fire. And this was like just a few days before the Kobe Bryant thing. And I'm like, wait, sacrificing Falcon to Dragon's fire? Uh, Again, we're talking about the rocket system, but he was testing the abort system on Falcon. And what he was doing, I think, was they had dummies in there that were being immolated. So they blew up dummies that week. And we were already looking at that week. I think maybe because it was like just that week, we're like, look, there's going to be some airborne immolation, some sort of ritual, part of this annual thing that these weirdo occultists with way too much money do every year. And then, as we were expecting, Kobe Bryant blew up. And then he blew up his dummies. But the terminology there about sacrificing Falcon to Dragon, that is classic, I think. I mean, that ties right in with the whole thing of like Luke Skywalker and Darth Vader, you know, the sun god being killed by the darkness. And actually, I have a, as planned, SpaceX rocket erupts into fireball, sacrificing itself to test a Crew Dragon capsule's abort system. That was, yeah, that was a week before Kobe Bryant blew up. So that was a week of things that we were looking at. So the Falcon sacrifice, though, represents the Sun King dying, being destroyed. And interestingly, this all ties into predictive programming with Kobe Bryant and these fire explosions. But yeah, it certainly did fit the bill as some kind of a ceremony. But he specifically used the word sacrificing to Dragon's fire. And I think right now the starships all have 33 engines. They always say that. We ignite all 33 engines. Most of you know what that all means by now. Okay, so anyway, date to watch, January 26th. And of course, Tom Hanks. So here's something else, one other thing. Kobe Bryant crashes, dies. They bury him in Corona Del Mar. And then the COVID thing really kicked up. And a lot of people were making connections between the name Kobe and the word COVID. And it seemed to signify something. Like a starting, a starting point. But Tom Hanks was patient number one, really, if you think about it. Nobody knew anybody who had until Tom Hanks had it. He was in Australia, where he went into lockdown, which was kind of interesting because he went to Australia because it was on fire, and he was going there to fight climate change. So he's in the inferno of Australia, burning because of capitalism and stuff, locked down with his Corona typewriter because he's got the coronavirus with his wife. At the same time, the lockdowns begin in Italy. If you remember, Italy really went right into it. And I think it was John LeBon who first brought this up, that the Dan Brown movie, well, it's a novel and it became a movie, Inferno, is about a super virus where the main character, the protagonist, wakes up in a hospital in Italy. And the movie stars Tom Hanks. So, and again, super virus called Inferno. He's in burning Australia under quarantine as Italy goes into lockdown. And in the movie called Inferno, he is waking up from some kind of a coma in a hospital in Italy. So the fact that Tom Hanks is releasing something with Steven Spielberg on 116 referencing World War II plane crashes suggests that something's going down. Mark your calendar, January 26th. And by the way, on January 19th, again, 119, and others are talking about this number now, which is great. This number is really key to understanding a lot of stuff. It has everything to do with Donnie Darko, planes falling. We've been talking about this forever. 119, Genesis 11:9, Tower of Babel falling. And interestingly enough, there's an ISS movie coming out on that date. And that movie is about America getting nuked and Russia and America on the space station fighting. So the movie's called ISS, coming out on 119. Very predictable patterning here, and I'm not saying it's going to fall on 119, but it's part of the propaganda buildup for the fall of the international cohesion which it represents. Okay, continuing. Tominoid says Close Encounters had a toxic train cover story for UFOs. Okay, so that's the meaning of it. In Close Encounters, it was a toxic train crash as a cover for UFOs landing. Fascinating. G33 says Vivek was on AJ today. Yeah, Vivek is the guy that's there to distract you from Dr. Shiva. And Brother Nathaniel, I heard some of that. Brother Nathaniel hates Jewish people, and he was ranting about it. And Alex Jones had to shut him up. And again, nothing none of you are unfamiliar with. It's just kind of strange that he would even have Brother Nathaniel on. But that's where we're at right now. That's where the right is at. That's the mentanol lacing the red pills. They get you chasing a red herring, a whodunit, a person you can point to that is now your scapegoat, and now you're back on the political horseshoe. It's another one of these trutherism traps. But yeah, he's from Real Jew News, and I think Alex Jones actually yanked it off the site. And what he said was that there are no good Jews, is what he said, because if they call themselves Jews, they believe that Jesus deserved to be crucified. So it's like this really abhorrent form of Christianity where, I don't know, it's almost like he's got to be an informant. Like, can anybody actually believe this? Unbelievable. And the whole premise of collective guilt doesn't make sense to me either. But anyway, it's really popular. People like Nick Fuentes love it. Alex Jones deletes it, so now he's going to be called a Zionist, for example. Yep, Year of the Dragon starts on 210. Okay, Jay Diggs says on 4/4/91, Senator John Hines died in a helicopter crash in Lower Marion, Pennsylvania. That's Kobe's hometown. Yeah, Kobe's helicopter crash has a lot of fascinating symbolism attached to it. You can find legends of Chamberlain Heights where he crashes in a helicopter and it blows up. And initially it was reported as an explosion. And by the way, when it happened, I was one of the first ones to go out there saying that we shouldn't even know how many people, we shouldn't know the names of the victims because the next of kin haven't been notified. TMZ is reporting stuff before the police are even there. And I think ever since we called that out, they stopped doing that. It just seemed like they had too much information, too much in the know. But there's some fascinating things there. He was in a commercial with Ye, where Ye gets in a helicopter, and as he's flying away, Kobe throws a basketball bomb into the helicopter and blows it up. So the exploding helicopter theme, Legends of Chamberlain Heights, the commercial with Ye, there's a few examples you can point to that kind of connect to the idea that this was a scripted fake death. And a lot of people were mad at me for saying that. Like, how dare you say he's not dead? I love him. So you want him dead? Or you're just, I mean, you would rather have him dead than believe that he's not dead, even though it's good news because he fooled you. Like, I don't quite understand the thought process behind the death clingers and the corpse clutchers. It's just morbid. You know, you're slathered in theatrical blood, virtue signaling, like you care about these martyrs and they don't even exist. It's just, it's always fascinating. It's paradoxical. You're like, wow, fake event. Nobody cried. Nobody died. Next day, people show up at a candlelight vigil, lots of tears gushing, money's flowing, and then you have the Red Cross show up or blood services and people donate blood for the victims who don't exist. So now you have real tears, real blood, and a lot of money. It's amazing. It's like a blood sacrifice and a shakedown all at once. I mean, that's just what they do. It's the crisis actor industrial complex. And there's a lot of crisis actors who aren't even paid, they're just volunteers. The volunteer army, in fact, let me just point this out. Most red pillars who claim that people are dying at these events may as well be described as, I would say, as, I don't want to say crisis actors, but I kind of do. Like, you're pretty much a crisis actor if you're a red pillar and you're saying that people did die at such and such event, even if you weren't there. If you have no personal information other than what you saw on the screen, if that's your frame of reference, at this point you're part of the crisis actor industrial complex, unwittingly, and we're trying to save those people. Like this individual who's mad at me for saying nobody died, we're trying to help him. Like, here's something he said, and this is from Venom Anonymous. He said, dude, seriously, if you got nothing, that's okay, except it's your theory. PSYOPs have a mix of real and fake. Extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence. And that is true. However, the extraordinary claim is from the media. And that's where the evidence is lacking. I don't have to provide evidence to debunk what hasn't been provided. This is Hitchens' razor. You know, very useful heuristic there. That which has been presented without evidence can be dismissed without evidence, and this includes Major League PSYOPs. The screen is not evidence in and of itself, and we know this to be true. We know that it's not evidence, and that it's compromised, and that it's a liar, and it's lied for so many years that you can't assume that the next PSYOP, it's going to be lie-free. The source is a liar. And it's a liar because of its selective perspective that excludes and conceals more than it reveals to you. So what I responded to him is this: no, they don't mix real and fake. Some people want to say, okay, maybe you have a point, but some of it's real. There's some blood, please, let there be some dead kids. Like, no, no, it's not like that. If it was real at all, they wouldn't have to fake it. And if they really did kill, let's say at any of these events, they did kill like 3 people, but the rest were actors. Everybody there is now complicit in a war crime. Everybody there now has that blood on their hands, real blood. They're all sadistic and evil creatures at that point. It's not happening like that. And they'll say, well, they have NDAs, they can't talk. Nope. One illegal act invalidates the NDAs, so that doesn't even hold water either. But what I said here is no, they don't mix real and fake, because then they wouldn't have to fake it, because it would be real. You're an MSM true believer with a fundamentalist mindset if you can't see the fakery because you accept the authority of the TV. What you're doing as a truther is adding conspiracy conjecture. You're an anti-skeptic because true skepticism would question the MSM premise. If you add on to it, you're MSM plus. It's really that simple. And again, many people don't like that. He went on to say, I agree that psychological warfare is a part of each narrative. However, that doesn't negate the death and destruction. Again, corpse clinger. He has no more evidence than I do. However, the burden of proof is not mine, it's his. Now, it's the mainstream media's, but since he's carrying their water, he's on their side of the screen, and he's arguing on behalf of their essential story, it's his burden of proof. And all he can do is point to fake blood. And I said you're a death clinger. You're actually defending MSM PSYOP terror. And the moral high ground and the intellectual high ground goes to the Autohoaxer. The truthers who think that their hearts are in the right place and that we're being callous because we're saying this stuff is fake, you know what? We're the only ones standing up for the real victims of the Psy War, including children. Meanwhile, those defending these fake terror narratives that are being part of the indoctrination process are actually defending state terror. I mean, if you want to really look at who's on the right side of history or who's on the moral high ground, it's not the people covered in fake blood. It's not the propaganda mules. It's certainly not the red pillars, and it's not the woke. Other people will say, well, what about the thermite? You don't know that the towers were brought down by some strange new or unconventional technology whatsoever. You have no information to support that. All we know is it was a demolition, which there are procedures for that, but we can also verify that it was surrounded by drills, military personnel, police, people doing mass casualty simulations, not to mention the decades of predictive programming for it, and that smoke wasn't some kind of direct energy weapon, toxic smoke. No, that was military smog generators. I've actually used those. I mean, I've seen that myself. Now, another thing, assuming deaths at 9/11 is an appeal to ignorance combined with an argument from incredulity. Like, oh, I don't know how they could do it. Like, a lot of people say, okay, I don't believe in any of it except for the jumpers. Okay, so you don't believe in planes, so you're aware and you're in full knowledge of the fact that they can invent people. So they don't even exist. Or they weren't really on the planes, but regardless, they didn't actually die because there were no planes. But they can't figure out the jumper thing. So they still, like, oh, those ones had to have died. Okay, well, look, the issue with that line of thinking is that just because you don't know how it was faked, and I understand, it's a complex thing, like it's a magic trick. But it doesn't mean you have to default to the official explanation. You can suspend judgment. Like for one thing, those were not witnessed live on TV. That's a lot of these things were added on later. When people remember the event, a lot of it's kind of like the Mandela effect. They file all these memories in the same drawer, and it's largely a composite. But when you really break down the structure of it, it doesn't have it doesn't hold up to scrutiny. And nothing that we saw that day falls outside of the realm of fakeability. We're just talking about a movie augmented event and the movie being played on all the news networks and TV. Dinah South says, I think Brother Nathaniel is Isaac Cappy. Interesting. G33 says Nathaniel and AJ must have the same intelligence handler. Yeah, I think so. That's probably true. And he does have a handler. If anybody doesn't know this, uh, InfoWars is part of the mainstream media's ecosystem. In fact, they play the heel. Their job is to keep freethinkers from going too far. It's a very successful gatekeeping operation, and I think it successfully kept a lot of people on board with like fake space, led them into Q-ism and into MAGAism as well. And not to mention, Jones was radicalized at Waco, and he was one of the faces of January 6th. Not a coincidence. Waco, Timothy McVeigh, Dave Koresh. It's got the hallmarks of a meta script. And again, last year, Trump kicks off his campaign in Waco. Not a coincidence. Duist Impera says, since we mentioned lack of limbless victims recently, new reports coming out citing a number of amputees skyrocketing. Yeah, I'm waiting for one of these crisis actors to run around with like half of a doll. Like just like the bottom half. Like shake it around and fake a cry for the cameras. Because I have a really hard time believing that you can drop a bomb on a baby and have an intact baby with closed eyes, looks like it's sleeping, and you can hold it up for the cameras and people can cry. It's like, no, sorry, you don't drop a bomb on a baby and have the baby in one piece. And I don't mean to be morbid, but you know, um, that's not what it looks like. I would imagine. I've never seen anybody blown up with a bomb. Actually, you know what? I've dealt with people blown up by meth labs. Hands blown off. I've seen people hit by trains. Reduced to like hamburger-sized pieces. But my point of it is, their gore isn't up to par. They don't know how to fake dead bodies. The bodies die and the eyes open, mouths open. So if you see these dummies on TV and their mouths are closed, their eyes are shut, yeah, that's fake. Again, the fake dead kid industrial complex and then the people who make the simulation training dolls have really made a lot of money, I believe. Not just here, not just with the recent attack, the 10/7, but Ukraine. I was reading this article about these surgical training dummies, like life-size, realistic dummies that you can do surgery on, you can intubate, they breathe and they bleed. They could probably make some that cry. Like they can outperform like living crisis actors. Nicotrauma says, Tim, your message is getting sharper and sharper. Yeah, the plan was this. The plan was release Autohoaxology 101, which is the textbook, the really beginning of a series, but it's the main textbook for the IPS Institute for Advanced Media Deconstruction. We are outlining a philosophical framework that doesn't require this think tank. Anybody could look at this and decide for themselves if skepticism is warranted in today's attention economy with so many vested interests competing for not just your attention, but for your belief in what they're selling. Because they're looking for lifetime customers, really. But anyway, we're reintroducing, I think, the original form of skepticism, and it needs to be done. And I think that this framework is necessary, and we have to just remove any BS. We have to keep it pure. We can't bargain. We can't have one foot in the matrix, one foot out. And we drew this dividing line after Vegas, and a lot of people said, no, we're staying in the fake. We're going to believe people died in Vegas. Auto hoaxers go too far. Yeah, look, flat earthers go too far, right? Because they go beyond the border of acceptable discourse, and they ask questions that ask, what's beyond? What if you're lying? They go beyond. Auto hoaxers have done the same thing. And the infinite plane society concept was really about talking about worldview without being confined to a domed flat earth model as a default. From the very beginning, I said, no, we don't have enough information. So the idea of infinite plane was really just to contradict the flat earth society's assumption of a dome and limitation and that there is no more land. And what we had to do, in many ways, I think, was to break this attachment to a model. Because as long as you have a model, it's really hard to even debunk this construct of outer space as presented. Like if you assume Earth is a discrete object floating in space, then space is all around. But if we don't go with that assumption, we go on what we can know, then we can't exactly assume we know where the edge is or where this quote space begins, but all we know is space is up. We don't necessarily know that space exists as described, which would contradict the very existence of up and down, these things being made, relative. But just as we had to break the attachment to a model, right now what we're doing with autohoaxology is we are breaking attachment to the world stage model. It's another form of dome. It's like a mental dome. It's a closed system. And what I'm positing is an open system. Exiting their world stage model, recognizing it as such. Like what we get collectively from all media, all entertainment, all of the political theater is actually monolithic. Big Brother exists. He just has millions of faces and it looks decentralized. It looks like it's been split apart with competing interests, but no, it's actually uniform. We do have a monolithic control over everything, worldview specifically, I mean. And until you can recognize that, you're in it. It's the Truman Show. And we're breaking that dome. We're stepping outside of it. And I would also say that the skeptics today are the only anti-Psywar. I guess you could call it, like, people talk about the anti-war movement. And I think that's kind of farcical now in retrospect. You can't be anti-war if the war is a psychological war only. Because then your anti-position is necessary for the pro-anti dialectic to keep the internal mind war going. And if that's what we're looking at, and I believe, I know that to be true, then the anti-Psywar position is the only valid one. And who are the conscientious objections to the objectors to this Psywar? Is there an anti-Psywar movement? It's not the red pillars, who are bloodthirsty, ready to get even with the deep state, or the QAnoners who want the world to end, and anyone involved in the political horseshoe. They're part of this perpetual war. The only ones who are truly outside of it, or who have stepped outside of the, contrived, what Orwell called the perpetual war, would be the skeptics, the ones who've opted out. Let me see if there's anything here. Commenter says, you could be the head of a department at Harvard with 3 PhDs, and one truth told, you will lose everything and it will never work again. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I would say so. But the thing is, you would never get there. Like, you would never arrive at this. So, for example, the people who are saying, I mean, when I say you would never arrive at this, the people who are saying, like, oh, this truther shot up a Walmart and he said 9/11 was fake. Like, that, you can tell it's a hit job on us. Because he would never have arrived at the conclusion that 9/11 was fake. You don't arrive at these conclusions unless you go through a specific series of, I would say, uh, not epiphanies, but maybe major paradigm shocks. Like, most truthers can't even say nobody died on 9/11. But if you went that far, you would already have moved past even the belief in mass school shootings and mass shootings and terrorism. So the idea that an auto hoaxer, someone who's not participating in any of this stuff, a true media skeptic, would somehow like be another terrorist, like the next Adam Lanza, makes zero sense. Because what we're doing is we're diffusing it. We're diffusing any potential for being a radical. And this is why we're also despised. Like, you're not going to go fight the deep state. You're not going to go become a stooge and try to run into the Capitol if you don't take it all that seriously. And a lot of them don't like the idea that we're not taking things seriously because they think that it's threatening and we're not taking the threats seriously. Or they may agree, it has been hoaxed. A lot of stuff are hoaxes, but it's going to get real. And when S gets real, you're going to feel really bad for misleading people into thinking it's fake. Because I've been advising people, if they're telling you to reach for the ammo, reach for the popcorn. And many will say that's bad advice. And I'm saying, no, it's not playing into the psychological war. I mean, look, I'm looking for peace of mind. Not through escapism, but by not plugging into their news cycle of abuse. Because you can use that surplus of emotional energy, that loosh, you can use that time for more constructive means. Like, there was supposed to be a blackout yesterday because the sun exploded or something, or they said it might explode. And they're like, there's a 25% chance that everything's going to go down. Everything's going to black out tomorrow. And that was, again, yesterday. I missed that headline, so I didn't have the whole day to ruminate about it. I didn't have the whole day to be worried about the grid going down. But a lot of other people did, and they talked about it. And so, like, when I talk about breaking news, I'm not breaking the news as in, like, hey, guys, this emergency just happened. I'm like, hey, look at this next plot twist. Let's get your popcorn ready. So we're not triggered, and if that triggers you, you're going to have to go somewhere where people are triggered. This is mind war inoculation. Salty Siren says the hive mind is getting more agitated and aggressive. Yeah, I just saw some defendant jump, and this is in a court in Las Vegas, just jump over the judge's desk there, just tackled her, almost probably wanted to kill her. I mean, I'm seeing examples of that all the time. And then some guy from Beverly Hills 90210 got attacked by a bunch of Teletubbies on motorcycles. Did you see that? I don't know who he is, but I saw the video. Beverly Hills 90210. Here it is. Now, my first thought is, okay, this guy faded from relevance. I can't even remember his name, so he needs to get some screen time. Okay, that's him. Ian Ziering. Beverly Hills 90210 actor attacked by bikers in Los Angeles. So imagine bikers. You're thinking leather, tattoos, meth, knives. No, 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 no. You look at the video, and I don't think this guy's that tall, but the fight consisted of mostly people in like basically on scooters, and they were short, pudgy, and wearing very bright colors. One of them had like a pink backpack, and I'm just saying, it wasn't the type of motorcycle gang like Hell's Angels you'd be thinking about. Actually, here's the video. It looked like Teletubbies, like a dog pile, like they were trying to hug him. Like, look at this snapshot. If you're looking at the screen, blue Teletubby, pink Teletubby, green Teletubby, they're all wearing helmets, so they're clumsy and they can't be identified, which makes me think actors. And he runs, he fights, scares them off, and then his daughter hugs him and cries. Everything about it says psyop to make him relevant for some movie. I wasn't moved by it at all. Did anybody here think that was real? Okay, continuing. Baking Brad says, have you seen the exploding houses in the news recently? No, but there was something about that recently. MLK Jr.'s home, his childhood home was nearly set on fire, and the burning house is something he referenced, and I think it references the West, ties into the programming in Westworld and the chapel and the burning house there, or Ye burning his house, his childhood house burned, and he mentioned that we're not going to be ready for the smoke. Like there's this reoccurring theme of the burning house. So it's interesting that a couple of days ago too, somebody, I think, was it Beyonce's house blew up or something? So there is something going on with burning houses. But if you want to drop a link, I noted the other day. So there's something symbolic about it. But there was something about one of her houses. I don't know if it burned. Oh, here we go. Beyonce's, and it's a childhood home. Her childhood South Central Houston home was engulfed in flames on Christmas morning. Okay, we're talking Yule, some pagan ceremony, childhood home burning. What's the symbolism? There's something there. And she's also significant because she was the one who performed during the Blackout Bowl 2013 Super Bowl 47. So 47, we've been seeing this number a lot as it ties to this next race. Trump, the 47 on his hat, the head wound being alluded to with the sniper that shot up the 4th of July, again 4-7, Parade, who had a 47 tattooed on his head. He's obsessed with Oswald. There's something up. Psy Obstacle says Nipsey in space. I don't know the context for that, but I like the way it sounds. The Nipsey psyop was one of the best psyops they've ever done. Like for us. They were so sloppy about it. I mean, what did they do? They had this guy who was shot 6 times, like in the torso, 3 times in the head. They had him on a gurney, and they're giving him like one-handed chest compressions while they're moving the gurney. None of these firemen with white gloves get any blood on them as they're doing chest compressions on the guy who supposedly just got shot. And then they slam the door behind him in the ambulance, number 57, which we noted that number. There's like so many numbers that synchronizes with similar fake events. And they drive off. And it's like, you guys stop doing chest compressions. That's weird. At the time, we had nurses calling in. We had first responders calling in, just commenting on that. And how like the LAPD had fewer interviews than TMZ when it came to actual eyewitnesses. Psy Obstacle says that the mainstream morning news shows are pushing civil war. Yeah. Well, World War III was so, 2022 and 2023. I think they're doing Civil War now. Probably do Civil War for a couple years, then it'll be World War III again. That's kind of been the pattern. But there has been some interesting things building up to it, like the Civil War movie coming out. Then you had the Leave the World Behind movie, referencing what could be an incoming Civil War. Captain America, who starts the Civil War in the movie, a guy called himself Captain America. He had an AR-15, tried to break into a military base. So there's been a lot of Civil War stuff. There was a Civil War reconciliation monument that was taken down, and then blood was thrown on the steps leading to the Lincoln Memorial. So there's definitely that. Okay, I'm going through some comments. J Dig says, can't believe he's 59, also in Sharknado. Okay. Okay, you know what? He was in Sharknado. That's the last time I've seen him. That's a great series, 1, 2, and 3. I think Ann Coulter is like the president in part 3. but it's some hardcore cli-fi, climate fiction. And we're not far off from full-blown sharknadoes, and it's pretty much self-evident. It's sharks caught up in tornadoes that get pulled from the ocean and they get just sprayed all over the cities during a rainstorm and floods. And so people are battling sharks in their homes and neighborhoods. And I think there's one scene where a shark's coming down from the sky and he's got a chainsaw and you think it swallows him, like the hero gets swallowed by the shark. You lose all hope and all that, and then he cuts. Spoiler alert! He carves his way out of the shark. Yeah, it's got to be a publicity stunt. Psyopsical says pre-promotion stunt from his PR team. It has to be his next movie. There's no other way to get headlines today. You got to get swatted, or you need to get groped at a Broadway play for Beetlejuice. You want to get more clicks than MTG. There's definitely an element of swatting on the right now that's like it's drawing attention to them. They can play victim, they can make the other guys look bad, but it's about attention. Like, I'm still waiting. I want to get swatted, but I'm going to wait for the right moment. I don't want to overplay it. I don't want to be like Tim Pool. Like, oh, we don't have enough live viewers. Let's get swatted. Dinah South says, Shriners on tiny scooters. That's what it looked like to me. Jay Diggs says, little bit tipsy Oompa Loompas. Yeah, it kind of, to me, it looked like a Power Rangers fight. Someone asks, what is a COVID-like cyber attack? Now, everything's a pandemic. In fact, there was a recent one. I think it was, oh yeah, bank AIDS. Remember the bank contagion? Oh, this bank is collapsing and any bank attached to it. So you're having like a financial contagion. I call it bank AIDS or BAIDS. And that ties into the Tom Clancy narrative, The Division, where on a Friday the 13th, a virus spreads on the cache, which is ridiculous. But if you follow the story, it's like, wait, we have a civil war and a collapse because of this calamity that started with what? Virus and money attached in this narrative here. So the idea of a bank collapse being compared to a viral spread is interesting, but then also you can combine all of this with a cyber attack. And I've been saying for some time that what they're probably going to do is say that we need to lock down the internet for the same reason we had to lock down society, because mind viruses are just as bad as viruses. And you can't get back online unless you get your mind vaxxed or you wear, at a minimum, a mind mask, which means you don't spread the following. And then you have a list of mind viruses that are the equivalent of COVID-19. That's why I've been calling Twitter Disease X, because Disease X is the hypothetical big one that the WHO says is going to take us all down soon. And it's going to be a mind virus. Mark my words. And you got to read that book, The Mind Virus by Richard Brody. Very significant book there, because that's where the quote science of memetics really emerged. But he's the guy who created the first version of Microsoft Word. And think about Microsoft Word, mind virus, Microsoft computer virus, Bill Gates. Now, a mind virus, a word, a virus. You see what I'm getting at here? The mind vax. And if you look at the cover art for Virus of the Mind, it's literally got a syringe stabbing into a brain. So these are long-term agendas. They've been using the lexicon of epidemiology to condition you for the present time, to condition you to accept the mind, or rather the thought crime itself. Yeah, there are some thoughts that are just crimes, or they are toxic, malinformation. And if you could just remove these, and this is that utopianism, if you could just get rid of these ideas and exclude them from everyone's minds, then we can be safe. We can be pure. Again, Virus of the Mind, 52 weeks on Amazon.com Hot 100. The new science of the meme, Richard Brody. And again, there's a syringe going into a brain. Commenter says the A24 trailer on YouTube. Oh yeah, A24's movie. It's called Civil War. And that's the guy that directed 28 Days Later. And 28 Days Later is about a rage virus. And we recently had a rage virus example, where a guy got on Twitter, fell into a Twitter bubble, and he goes out and he shoots up a bowling alley. This is the Robert Card shooting. He shot a few locations up, but he was radicalized by Twitter. He caught the rage virus. They called it a quote rampage. And I thought, what are they conveying here? Now, in the movie 28 Days Later, the rage virus is created by making monkeys watch the news. So these chimpanzees are watching the news and it radicalizes them. They become violent. So, in other words, man's violence causes this virus and it brings down man. It's this statement that they're making, because man's the problem and everything. But the irony of it is that the monkeys were radicalized on fake news to do to become violent. It's fascinating how it's the same writer in Civil War, and we're at this era now where yes, people do believe that you can be radicalized into violence online. And this is why I say when they bring about the next calamity, the nuke or whatever, they're going to say, yeah, sure, the blackouts, the EMP, the destruction, the chaos, yeah, it's the bomb, but the bomb wouldn't have happened if it wasn't for free speech and Twitter, which caused these white nationalists to sync up with the Russians and buy the bomb and do this. So this is all going to be blamed on you for not wearing your mind mask. Commenter says that the 100th idiot effect is real. You know what's not real is the 100th monkey effect. That's actually fake. It's fake news. Like, oh, you have all these monkeys, and they can't figure out how to clean the mud off of their bananas or something. And if you teach one monkey over here, other monkeys will spontaneously know how. And this is why if you think of something, other people... No, that's not how it works. It's kind of a new age way of shoehorning in the idea of a collective consciousness that we all share. I mean, it's I don't know what you call it. Maybe it makes people feel nice, but I think it's fake. Okay, we talked a bit about Woo's News. And look, this is like a 1 hour interview conversation with the Alpha Warrior, and it's definitely worth watching. I'm going to drop a link in here again. So, Woo's News is the person who, more than anyone, I think, has destroyed the January 6th narrative. And most people are in damage control mode. When Tucker Carlson says, they're not telling you about the feds that were there, that's damage control. The truth of it is, and this is the truth, the whole thing was simulated, A to Z. That's the fact of it. There are no January 6th prisoners. The QAnon shaman is a hoax. He knows he's a hoax. It's all phony. And the people who don't want to accept that can, live with their fantasy if they want. That's fine. But let me play a few seconds of it here. Just to remind you of who this is. I put a link below.
For sure.
Speaking of the timing, one of the things that you did that I hadn't seen anywhere else, I didn't see anybody else document it like this, was the way you showed people being pre-positioned.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah.
And it's one of those things where, I know people that haven't seen your documentary yet are probably saying, well, it's no, when you see this, it's awkward places to just be static at.
Yep.
Like you're like, what?
They don't even have a view.
And I had not seen that yet.
Yep.
And then when I saw that, I was just like, this does look like a film staging production, because, I used to do canine work as well, explosives, and we do stuff for Hollywood.
Ooh.
And, so you see, and it's just like, man, there's some consistencies here.
Yeah.
Like it looks like a production, even like the rest areas, and it's just like, and the one thing that I was like, now this is possible, every agency has, different ways they do things. But when you showed those, the cops, if they're really cops, going to like these containers to get their riot gear.
Yeah.
I was like, what?
Okay, now again, you're just hearing another perspective. This is Woo's News' breakdown of January 6th with timestamps proves, unequivocally in my mind, that it wasn't a false flag. It wasn't real people provoked. It was not a false flag. Nobody died. Nobody cried. It was 100% theater. No one died. No police officers died. None of those scenes that they gave us were organic or real. The QAnon shaman, who's now like an InfoWars level host and truther, spewing David Icke type New Age isms, is an actor. Like, we have liars who are just leading the red pillars, leading them like Pied Pipers. And it's kind of sad at this point, but they're truthers, but they're just so easily led. And they're led because they don't want to let go of the illusion. Like, what does it mean to call yourself a truther, but to be wedded to an illusion that your enemies made to enslave you? What does that mean? Okay, let's continue again. Happy birthday, Kyle Rittenhouse, Greta Thunberg. They are now both 21 years old enough to drink, and they are, I think, perfect representatives of the political horseshoe on the fringes. One side wants to shut down society to save Gaia, and then the other side wants to go shoot looters to defend capitalism, and he's big MAGA. You could kind of see the toxic masculinity and then what Greta represents on the other side. The fact that their birthdays are the same says more than just something about astrology. I think it says something about how when they write these characters into existence, they do put a lot of significance on their entry and exit dates. Okay, this is Corporal Joe Bowers on X. He says, the reason for the occult use of the number 119 is to encode the two mega tsunamis they plan to unleash destruction on Babylon, USA, one for the West Coast, one for the East Coast. Now that's ominous. However, let's look at that for a minute. There's quite a lot. The sea attack, Godzilla, the Kraken stuff, the Titanic, the Hunt for Red October, Terminator 2. There is quite a lot to suggest a tsunami. Now, the 7.5 tsunami that hit Japan that looked like a Godzilla attack, I mentioned this, and it did look like a Godzilla attack. Cracked streets, the plane covered in the burning plane. Now, I'm saying that that's part of the theatrical buildup here because Godzilla is a metaphor for the nuke. It's tied into the symbolism of the Kraken, to the beast, or the destroyer rather, the destroyer in the abyss, Revelation 9:11. The destroyer, again, is a reference to Oppenheimer and the nuke. But what I'm pointing out here is the 119 number has to do with the fall of the Tower of Babel as well. And I think it ties into the sinking of the Titanic, which is synonymous with the sinking of the Twin Towers in all the predictive programming. So the West is Babylon, and the sinking is what we're looking at. And this would even tie in to the movie Leave the World Behind with all its Donnie Darko references, because Donnie Darko, released on 119, has many connections to this. But specifically, the movie Leave the World Behind, I think it's the planes falling, Donnie Darko references. There's not a nuke in that one, but there is one in Leave the World Behind. Again, the nuke underwater. But now here's the other connection. The 7.5 earthquake in Japan happens to correspond to drills they were doing in Seattle in 2022. So in the summer of 2022, they said if a 7.5 earthquake hits Seattle or near Seattle, there would be a 42-foot tall tsunami. Here's some articles from this. Tsunami waves as high as 42 feet could crash into Seattle, July 11th, 2022. Simulation of the impact of a 7.5 magnitude earthquake on the Seattle fault. The waves would be 42 feet high. Tsunami wave of 42 feet possible in Seattle if a 7.5 earthquake. So this is a connection: Godzilla, Japan, Seattle. That's what I'm pointing out here. This connects it, the tsunami and the 7.5 thing. And it could be remarked also that when we were looking at Westworld and Westworld burning and Westeros burning because of the dragons, and this is the year of the dragons burning Westeros, and winter is coming. It looks like nuclear winter with the ashes falling. At that same time, Stranger Things had a season ending with the earth cracking open, kind of like the crack in Japan in the ground, but the cracking open, hellfire unleashed, ashes falling from the sky. And that was the result of a 7.4 magnitude earthquake. So, in other words, on TV, on Netflix, the TV show has a 7.4 magnitude earthquake. At the same time, there are simulations in Seattle for a 7.5. Both of them pertain to the West getting it. And the West, as Babylon, is really deeply encoded into a lot of the stuff that we talk about here. The One World Trade Tower is 1,176 feet high. 1776. That's a Tower of Babel reference. If you look at the Masonic calendar, the Annu Lucius, which is 4,000 years older than ours, and it's based on this biblical time frame. 1776 AL is when the Tower of Babel's construction begins. America's construction, or America's founding, 1776 AD. So you see a connection here. America and Babylon right there. But more, 1776 AD on the Masonic calendar would have been 5,776, which is the height in inches of the Great Pyramid. So now you have a connection between the Great Pyramid, the Tower of Babel, and America. And that's, of course, on the back of the dollar bill. Your money with the mono I. But this is all connecting to this greater body of symbolism about the real destiny of America, the secret destiny of America. The eagles of Phoenix. The burning down, build back better thing. And regarding Leave the World Behind, there's some Matthew Perry symbolism. In a few different scenes, they show America on a map that looks like it's been X'd out. He dies on 10/28, which is a lunar eclipse date. His character, Chandler Bing in Friends, who's featured in Leave the World Behind, it's all about friends in the last episode, Chandler Bing has the birth date of 4/8. Well, 4/8 is this eclipse date where America is being, you could say, X'd. Like the eclipse starting in 2017. Here we go. On Monday the 8th, 2024, Monday the 8th of April, a total solar eclipse will cross North America. So this corresponds to the other one. So America being crossed over. And again, in the movie Leave the World Behind, they show America with a big X through it, and the map's ominously painted blood on half. They show it upside down. My point being, though, Chandler Bing's death by drowning. And then in the intro to Friends, he's playing in the fountain, spitting out water. They said he was depressed. He was on depression medication, ketamine, which is why he went under. So going under, underwater, depression, these are all financial terms. So I thought, okay, it could be a financial thing. And the movie Leave the World Behind, the last section was actually called The Flood. So we're looking at the flood as maybe symbolic for like maybe the information, which is what White Noise was about, the White Noise movie that preceded the Palestine, Ohio train derailment. But it could also be about the money, the financial system, thus depression. Or it could be two literal tsunamis, east and west coast. Michael Letts said, we've all seen this video today. Oh, this is the one where the judge gets attacked. I mentioned this. And the flag falls. And he thinks it's probably significant that the flag fell. And that one, and also rather, look, the judge gets attacked at 11:09.
Because I just can't with that history. In accordance with the laws of the state of Nevada, this court...
So there's a disturbing video of a man attacking a judge at 11:09. And you do see an American flag falling. It looks real to me. Does it mean it's real? No. Looking real doesn't mean it's real. Everything that's fakeable on TV, if they can fake it on World Wrestling Entertainment, if they can fake it in the movies, they can fake it on the news. Very interesting timing. All right, let's continue here. One thing I want to reiterate, because I put this Mickey Mouse meme up there and I said 9/11/01 was a simulated terror attack, no one died. And this person said that auto-hoaxing was, quote, brought in to break up the community of real media skeptics in 2014. And my main point here is that auto-hoaxers are the only true skeptics. Truthers can only manage to be selectively skeptic because they accept the implicit argument from authority that the MSM presents. Ooh, nice. J Dig says Game of Thrones House of the Dragon Season 2 comes out this summer. The plot will revolve around civil war. That's all the foreshadowing you need. Because when the first season of House of the Dragon came out, we had the Roe v. Wade leak, which happened 50 years prior, by the way. A lot of 1973 to 2022 overlap. But there was this scene where the leak happens and women are marching in anger because their abortion is now being targeted. The very opening episode of House of the Dragon has a scene where this queen is giving birth and she has to die giving birth because they need the son. So, in other words, she doesn't control her own body. She's a broodmare for the state. She's the most powerful woman in the kingdom, but she's just a woman, and they need that baby. So, the whole point of it, I think, is that here you have this movie coming out at the exact same time that this question about women and bodily autonomy and all this stuff gets brought up. And I'm thinking, okay, that's what you would call concurrent programming. And it was the very first episode. I'm like, I'm going to watch TV and just kind of tune out from the news. I'm kind of tired of this political football. And what do we get? More political football. So the fact that House of the Dragon Season 2 comes out this summer and involves civil war, here's what we can do right now. And you can mark this down. I am predicting the predictive and concurrent programming. Yes, there will be some kind of concurrent real-life news events, quote real life, that will correspond to Game of Thrones. Okay, continuing here. Elephant Tusk says looks like a major event to transpire in April. Ooh, Isabel Ann says Oppenheimer makes a big X on the chalkboard in a movie dividing where the labs in the US are. Now think about the symbolism of X, as in Twitter. Disease X. Disease X being the place where the radical mind viruses will gestate before it culminates in an actual nuke. Or Disease X, where they are nuking our minds, destroying our cognition with the deluge of mal, dis, and misinformation, or even truth. But it's so disconnected from reality that it's actually just further liquefaction of reality. This is an active measure, I think, against cognition. So that's interesting there. Okay, Elephant Tusk says, just confirms we live in a simulation. Well, here's the thing. As human beings, what we are, we live with a simulation. We live in the real world, but then we have our internal representation of the world. And the longer you live, the more wisdom you accrue, the more understanding you have, the more your internal representation of the world is augmented by truth, by things you know to be true, that make your reality more controllable. You know about the threats, you know how things work. So there's that. So your internal representation of it is separate from the real thing, but there's an overlap. But what they've done is, in addition to what your perceptions teach you, and in addition to what you learn and experience, through media, they add an additional level. And to me, that part that diverges from the corresponding reality outside of yourself is the simulation. And people live in that. You can liken this to madness, delusion, schizophrenics, people who are, whether it's through drug-induced psychosis or organic brain dysfunction, you can cease to live in the objective reality. You can live in your head. And the masses essentially have an Oculus on 24/7, the digital hoodwink. It's already on. In fact, we were born into a simulation in that sense. And I think that the truth movement consists of those who are trying to peel away the simulation. They realize that it's fake. But instead of pushing away from the screen, they look deeper into the screen. They actually go through it. And they find themselves in a nightmarish alternate reality that no one believes them about. But it's the opposite direction from where we are. Okay, I'm going through some comments here. Lickety Split said, why did it take that long for season 2? They were probably waiting for the election. Travis Cloud says, Fepe Stradamus. Yeah, there is an element here of prediction, but this isn't divine revelation. I'm not being told anything by an angel. I'm not sitting in a cave somewhere with some angel telling me what's up or the future. What's happening here is we are reading the metascript, the big story that is presented to us in entertainment through every single platform, every type of media, and then later happens in, quote, real life. The news benders write our news years in advance, and they prepare us for it and make it seem inevitable through the arts, through the entertainment. And I'm not against art, I'm not against entertainment, but what we're doing here is somewhat, I think it's kind of singular. You could look at this as a new enlightenment if we're right. I mean, I'm open to the possibility that we're wrong, but the burden of proof has just not been met, not even in the slightest. But if we're right about this, then what we are doing is in fact pulling off the digital hoodwink. So it's not like we're telling people, oh, this event was fake and that one was fake. No, actually what we're doing is we're getting people to reframe how they perceive the world through the lens of hypermediation. There is something I call the mediated mind. That is the person who is fully adjusted to the script and goes along with it, even lying along to get along, or self-gaslighting. The Truman Syndrome. Most people are in their Truman shows. And what holds them in? Adherence to lies. That's pretty much it. And until you can see the lie world order for what it is, and people feel like lie is a bad word. You can't call somebody a liar. Actually, I can. Like if I were to say, let's just name somebody, it might be triggering. If I were to say, the QAnon shaman is a liar. Yeah, he's a liar. Jake Chansley is a liar. He's lying to you with every single breath. People will say, well, maybe he's not lying. Maybe he's just misled. Well, if you want to give somebody the benefit of the doubt, even if even if you don't mean to, at that level you're insulting their intelligence, because you'd either have to be a dupe or a liar to be at that level in the psyop. But you have to call it what it is. The beginning of wisdom, right? Calling things by their right name, recognizing your own ignorance. That's really the beginning state, and I think that's where we're at here. We are having to be real about it. Donnie Darkened noticed this. Donald Trump is selling pieces of a suit that he wore while being persecuted by Democrats, exactly like when Jesus' garments were divided among the Roman soldiers, who threw lots to determine who would win each piece. Again, this is Trump and his Christ typology. This is fascinating. This is really intriguing. All the Antichrist, all this Christ stuff with Trump, this JFK stuff, this is by design. We are living through the most momentous psyop, possibly of the next, I don't know, 100 years. I mean, this is a big one. This is a big one. And it's coming. And we're not going to believe it, but they are. And so I look at these characters like Donnie Darkin, for example, who seems to have all kinds of inside information. He has the best compilation of all Donald Trump predictive programming, more than anybody, but he's completely anonymous. He's been on Tim Pool. And what's more, and I've criticized him for this, he believes the events are real. So Donnie Darkened is an MSM Plus red pillar who also believes that Trump is the Antichrist. Now, he has very good reasons for this, because there's a very strong narrative, but that doesn't make it true. In fact, there's a book here, President Trump, Son of Man, the Christ. This has been around for some time. But here's my take on it. I think that Donald Trump is going to be a part of some major league psyop, and they have all these operatives out there who are there to make sure that whatever goes down, nobody calls it fake. They want some people blaming China, some to blame Iran, some to blame the left, some will blame the CIA, the deep state, the Clintons, George Bush. Like there's going to be all kinds of scapegoat narratives here, or just some crazy person. But nobody's going to call it fake. And any truthers talking about it are going to have all kinds of rabbit trails ready. 9/11 was the same way. A lot of people were ready to call 9/11 an occult, a ritual, a mass sacrifice, but nobody called it fake. My first foray into 9/11 trutherism was really when I was looking at the symbolism. And I was into David Icke's work when I was reading about this stuff, thinking, yeah, this has got to be some kind of blood sacrifice. And my point is, those narratives were there probably to prevent any kind of real auto-hoaxing to take place. Okay, Salty Siren says it's going to be like Clue. Yeah, no doubt. It's going to be the next JFK thing. Who shot Kennedy? People still talk about that. It's like, yeah, we know who did it, and it was Stanley Kubrick. I'm going to leave this guy alone, but one more comment from Ven Anonymous, the guy who is covered in fake blood. We've been debating about 9/11. He said that he knows people who are dropping dead. He knows people, and I called him out on it because he said that they were dropping dead like in Wuhan. And then later he said, I never said I know them. I said people dropping dead around me, meaning around where I live. Okay. And he said there's a noticeable uptick in emergency services. I don't know if you recall, but in 2020, they would turn their sirens on and just drive around. Part of the illusion warfare. Psychological warfare doesn't quite work as a term. And Lex Luthor really nailed it when he started calling it illusion warfare. All right, we've got some interesting comments here tonight. Appreciate everyone and their participation. We're just getting started on this thing, and a lot of you have been getting the books. I have a new batch coming in a few days. January 19th, we're going to have our first IPS Cyber Symposium. I'm inviting people here to the headquarters, and we are going to do our best to bring down, figuratively speaking, the ISS. That is the objective. And it's going to be a doozy. It's going to be a monster. I don't know how they're going to counter this. We really have to do some work here. I've been following a lot of these flat Earth debates, and Jake the A-hole has been taking a lot of crap from these globers. And they made the point, and Fight the Flat Earth in particular said that the argument that they're using movie magic is an argument from incredulity. That's the best they can do. No, it's not an argument from incredulity to say that they're using a movie, a special effect. It's an argument from authority to say that the screen is scientific evidence. That you can point to the Apollo 11 footage and say, yeah, this is evidence that they went to the moon. No, it's evidence they made a movie. There's a big difference. Anyway, this is the Masquerade JT33 featuring Symbia. We'll be back tomorrow. Subscribe to the newsletter. I'll put the link below. Thanks again for all the comments.
You have now entered the New World Order's AI construct, where nothing is as it seems. Your dreams and aspirations have been selected for you. All that makes you who you are was predetermined by the now functioning AI. Free thought is no longer an option. We now have control over all things, including the very thoughts we allow you to have. Do not try to resist. Welcome to the Masquerade.
Some sort of illusionary grid that we're living in. Still I'm entrenched in the thought that my thoughts are my own and I'm giving in. Tired of living with hypnotic psychosis of going through all of the social media motions. I don't care what you posting in. Keep on scrolling through all of the propaganda. Keep on showing support, you're giving them the upper hand. You can find any info to support any truth that you wanna pursue it. Truth is subjective, I'm being selective in choosing the path, and I knew it. Welcome to the masquerade. We're playing charades where the world has been staged like a play. The play is on the people, either you wake up